That's it.
Wow.
That was a 2-day speech, by the way. Now,
And we actually got something pretty cool related to that.
well, let me show you something first. Can you read the title on that picture right there?
Liberty and Union now and forever.
See, that was the debate, and that's when he delivered that. Now, Tim, pull out the cool thing we have, part of it.
Matt,
When
you
we
want
come
to help?
back. David, can I start here?
Absolutely.
I'm just looking here. This is New Haven, January 4th, 1788. Sir, please play to Mr. or is it Zachariah Beecher, 22 shillings and 8 pence, lawful money, on account of what is due to me on order from the committee payable to the yada yada yada. This is like a check.
Well, it's asking for money for repayment for congressional services because he has just finished with the Constitutional Convention just shortly before. He's a signer of the Constitution. He is a member of the Continental Congress and has been from way back at the beginning. So this is, they would get per diems. Congress allowed them per diems and payments for their expenses.
How did you stop forgery of stuff like this?
He had character back then.
Is that what it was?
Let me give you an example. You know, Alexis de Tocqueville came to America and said, I want to see what makes America different.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is Alexis de Tocqueville was a Justice Department official in France. So he's really concerned about the justice system. That's all I came here to say, was justice system. So he's coming here because he said, I hear they don't have the problems with crime in America that we do in France. Because they had 40,000 people put to death, capital punishment in France. In America, you have two guys who formed our judicial system. One is one is Joseph Story, the other is James Kent. They're called the fathers of modern jurisprudence, of American jurisprudence. James Kent is in charge of the entire judicial system of New York, and he's one of the guys who helped the American judicial system. So he's in New York, and he personally handled 1,755 cases on the Supreme Court of New York. He served 16 years, and he, like de Tocqueville, was very concerned about crime here in America. And Tocqueville in France, but here we are in America, so de Tocqueville come get answers. And see, what really ticked James Kent off was in 16 years of serving on the Supreme Court of New York, dealing with every crime that came to them, they dealt with murders. And in 16 years, they had 8 murders in the state of New York. 8 murders in the state of New York, 1 every other year. Chicago's got 1 every 12 hours. D.C., 1 a day. New York City, 1.5 a day. We're talking 8 murders in 16 years. De Tocqueville says, I got to go see what's happening over there. And when he got here, the whole thing just blew up in his face. He said, I can't believe how different America is. And he looked at education, he looked at transportation, he looked at church, he looked at everything. He said, this is amazing. And that's where we get the term American exceptionalism. It's out of his book. But it was because of the justice system. So
that, and everybody was like, I could stab you to death, but I've been working so hard on the
Yeah,
field, I
that's
just can't lift the knife. I'll get to it
Too.
tomorrow. And then by the next day, it was all blown off.
But then when you're 6 years old and memorizing 60 verses over the weekend, that helps the integrity. And so there was just not that much crime that went on. And you had the personal honor and integrity not to overcharge for something. That's not what you're going to do. You're just going to get paid for your expenses. And so it was a whole different climate.
People will say, David, that's just that people were never like that.
Sorry, read history. Oh, that's right. We don't read history today. People were never like that.
Well, and it depends on whose history you read.
Well, that's true, too.
Because if you read a history of someone governed by the moral foundation, by a faith, Christianity, the right Judeo-Christian ethic, you find a lot different atmosphere than if you read some of European history. Because you don't see that in history unless, again, they have a moral code that they are governed by, which there's no greater code than that.
They had a lot of religion in Europe, but it didn't get down to the individual person.
Yeah, and religion is what I have a problem with. Faith is what we should be striving for. Religion is the system that makes it work.
You don't need the system like you need the personal input. And that's what we did. Everybody read the Bible. You memorized the Bible. You got it in your own heart. That made the difference. So that's a big deal. Now, we were talking about Daniel Webster and that famous line, and that really is what drove so much of the American thinking up to the Civil War. We're one and inseparable. Liberty and it's not liberty or union, it's liberty and union, one and inseparable, now and forever. And so here's one of the things that's kind of interesting out of that thinking time, that period time.
Oh my gosh, this is huge.
This is a parade drum.
You can see right here on that side.
From where, David?
This would have been, we don't know where. We just know it's a parade drum from the 1830,
Can you give
1840
it to me?
period.
I might be able to. Have you looked inside?
I have not looked inside. This is
look
brand
inside.
new. Just come in. There's the hole right there you can see into.
Usually, sometimes you can look into the hole, and there it says, Daniel D. something, April 25th, 1904 is where he is, his handwriting inside, and I see.
So that's probably when they
nothing
redrummed it.
else. Yeah, I see nothing else of marking inside, at least on that side.
Interesting, yeah, on that side.
Usually the makers print
Would put
is
their
on the
name
other
there
side,
somewhere. Yeah, so that's. I hope
So
it's not-
Union and Liberty,
That's the again the emphasis.
one and inseparable. That is the
Now and
Daniel
forever.
Webster.
That's Daniel Webster, and so that is the phrase that characterized America for all those decades leading up to Civil
And
War.
that is Civil War, David?
Well, that is pre-Civil War. That's considered to be a parade drum from pre-Civil War. So that's the emphasis of that phrase. It really characterized a lot of what we did in our thinking.
How, I mean, to think that there's no media. And
People read. They actually read.
they had to have.
They read. And that's why when Thomas Paine put Common Sense out, look at the penetration it got. Look how many copies they kept printing and reprinting and reprinting.
I mean, to
and
think
reprinting.
that went on to a drum.
Yeah,
That's
know what I mean?
because everybody read
Pop
that
culture.
Daniel Webster speech,
it was.
Yeah, it's pop culture.
which shows you how deeply it had penetrated
Yeah.
your thinking.
Pretty remarkable. Pretty remarkable.
So all sorts of stuff. Here's a piece right here. We'll come back to Roger in a moment. Newspaper, 1791. And at the top of this paper, now, again, they read, try looking for pictures. You get very little except the wood prints here. What's always cool about these old newspapers is, and I love as much as anything reading the ads that's in them. You buy a house for $4.50 or whatever it is. And so it's always a lot of fun on the ads. But in this particular paper, they have an ad up on the front called Law Lectures. If you can see what it says there. Can you read that?
By the Honorable James Wilson, LLD, Professor of Laws in College and Academia at Philadelphia, will be delivering on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday every week, 6 o'clock in the evening, at the College and Law exercises every Saturday. Tickets of admission may be had at Dr. Wilson at his house on Market Street, or the Reverend Dr. Rogers at the college, December 18th.
Does that tell you anything at all?
No.
Didn't tell me. This is one of the things that got me into history. Was I was reading a U.S. Supreme Court case in 1844, and it was a unanimous decision by the court that said, if you're going to be a government-run school, you will teach the Bible. We will not allow a government-run school not to teach the Bible. And they quoted the Honorable James Wilson. I said, who in the heck is that? And I'd never heard the name in my life. So I looked him up. Tim, why don't you hit behind us here?
Well, which picture do you want to use?
Let's do both of them.
Because James Wilson was one of 6 guys that signed both
Constitution and the
the
Declaration.
Declaration of the Constitution. So in this one, let's see.
Right there.
Generally speaking, James Wilson's a guy that you would recognize as you're wearing today glasses. He generally is a guy you recognize because he
See that?
almost always wore glasses.
Oh, I've seen that before. I always thought that was Franklin.
No, that's
No.
James Wilson.
So Franklin, this one is up here. Franklin Constitution is down here. And so in this picture, you're looking for a guy
Under the flag on
with
the right.
Right
glasses.
there, yes.
There you go.
Right
No,
under
there's
by
a
the
guy
drum.
with glasses.
Now see, the other founding father that always had glasses, Patrick Henry, but his are always on top of his head. He never wears them down here. And so James Wilson always has them down. Now, what else do we know about James Wilson? He's the second most active member of the Constitutional Convention. He spoke on the floor of the convention 168 times. He might have had just a little hand in what went on.
Which, by the way, that's more than Madison did.
Long time more, way over what Madison. As a matter of fact, 100 years ago, they called James Wilson the master builder of the Constitution. He's part of the group that came up with the Electoral College. The bicameral system goes back to Roger Sherman, but he's the one who comes up with a way to have elections where that everybody gets a voice, both states and people. I mean, what he did. Now, because he's so active, when Washington comes into office and the Congress says, okay, let's have a Supreme Court now. You got one Chief Justice, and we're going to let you have 5 Associate Justices. He's an original justice on the Supreme Court. And so what you've got here is a justice on the Supreme Court while he's sitting on the Supreme Court is teaching law classes. He started the first organized law school in America. And so you see it there at the college. And so he's inviting it to the public to come to the law lectures. These are the first law books ever done in America. That's the original set of law books from James Wilson, that this is where American law comes from. So he is the guy who laid the foundation for what de Tocqueville later found with James Kent and Joseph Story. So this is the foundation laid by James Wilson.
He also